coming up on the Lead Ministry Podcast.
Here's an important piece to this. I want everybody in podcast land to listen. I can't control the meetings that are being done to me, but I sure can control all of the meetings that are being done to my people.
Now your host, Josh Denhart.
Hey, welcome back everybody to the Lead Ministry Podcast. We're grateful that you're here. We are excited about today. Today is a concept that is hard won by yours truly, Mr. Josh. That's right. Years and years and years ago, I had to conquer my own personal sense of implosion, which was leading to burnout. And the reason that I was imploding is that I was fretting about other ministry areas. Other ministry areas weren't doing something right, and I was getting way caught up in why they were doing that. So we're going to give you some strategies, because I guarantee that you've probably got your underwear caught up in a wad about somebody down the hall from you, and you have no ability to change or be responsible for that. Well, Bill, we're grateful that you're here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. You're already speaking to me, even in the intro.
Oh, that's so funny. So I'm reading your mail today, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's actually a lifelong concept, but we're talking about this idea of burnout, and one of the ways that you can actually burn out, and of course what we're trying to do in this podcast series is to help you avoid burnout. One of the ways that you can burn out is to you can make the mistake of this idea of I am concerned about many things. I am responsible, but for a few things. And we can start putting our energies toward things that we have no responsibility over. Yeah, I'm concerned about it, but I can actually start to divert my attention and my energy and my mental resources toward things that I have zero control over. And that leads to burnout. Am I right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You got to be responsible for your own stuff.
You have to put your energies toward your stuff, and you got to I'm sorry, as hard as this is, you almost have to turn a blind eye to other areas in the church, maybe another staff person or another ministry area that's doing something completely dumb in your opinion. And you can't get spun out about that. And I've had this. This is part. You are a lead ministry coach. I do lead ministry coaching. This is one of the core concepts that we talk about on call number 1. And I'm telling you, so many times, hundreds of people around the country, when I teach this or whatever, they're like, "Whoa. This is absolutely spot on with my life." And so we're talking about concerned versus responsible. Well, let's define it quickly. What is concerned? What is responsible? Then we're going to develop it and dig a little bit deeper. And then we're going to give you a very, very, very practical 4-letter word, right? A 4-letter word and it's not a naughty word. It's a great word. It's actually a little axiom. Those 4 letters that I came up with to get myself out of the ditch, and it's been helpful to get others out of the ditch as well. Well, let's jump in. Let's define concerned, and then let's define responsible. Well, here's a definition of concerned: an emotion associated with being troubled or anxious about something, when much thought is given toward an unknown outcome. What do you say to that, Bill?
I like that. I like the second part of that, especially when much thought is given towards an unknown outcome. That sounds like worry.
It sounds like worry. This is exactly right. And yeah. I can get worried about things that I absolutely have no control over. And this happens in all areas of life. We're not going to get into how to manage, your adult children, or to how to manage your almost adult teens, right? We're not going to talk about the political landscape, all of which this is going to be great to apply those, but we're specifically talking today about you as a staff person at church and how you need to not give much thought toward an unknown outcome around which you have no possible way of controlling. That's the concept.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually an unknown or unvalued cost to being concerned about all these other things. Like you think, well, I'm not actually doing anything about it. I'm just concerned about it. But there is an unknown cost to that.
Well, yeah, and that unquantifiable cost is still a cost. And you're spending a limited amount, a discrete amount of resources that God has given you in a day, and you're burning it for something that is not, it's in vain. You can't do anything about it. Okay, so you're concerned. Yeah. I have concerns. But now let's talk about responsible. Here's a definition of responsible. Being accountable for something that is within one's own control or management. Bingo.
This is where you can actually, you're the one who's in control, who can pull the levers and fix what you need to fix. And so it's where you need to focus.
That's exactly right. So I may be concerned about many things, but I'm responsible but for a few. Focus on those few. Okay, here we go. Now, we defined those two things. Well, what is the difference between concern and responsibility? We're going to dig it a little bit deeper now. So I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories about my own life, Bill. So the senior leaders at my church, we had a big staff meeting every Monday, and it was not good. I call it a terrible meeting. And it really stressed me out. I mean, like, I don't know why this bothered me so much, but well, here's some of the reasons why it bothered me, I guess. One, they would show up late to their very own meetings. The entire staff was sitting there waiting, and these two senior leaders would roll in late. So I didn't think that was really that cool. I thought that was somewhat disrespectful. Number two, there was no agenda. Okay. And because there was no agenda, it was just kind of a floaty, fly, whatever. They really didn't have a set thing that we were going to do most of the time. Often, they would meet at a bagel shop for their Monday morning meeting, and they would come late to this all staff meeting. And I am a smart enough guy, and I could see through. And I was like, I think they're making up what we're talking about either 5 minutes before or literally right now. This is not my first rodeo. I could see through it. Go ahead.
I'm literally having a sympathetic, nervous response to this right now.
This podcast is already stressing you out.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's also stressing out other people out there in podcast land. And here's what I want to tell you. Listen, you're not alone. There's value, Bill, in you just going like, wow, Josh Denhart experienced that same thing.
Yes.
My church is not unique. And so somebody out there in podcast land, I hope you feel comfort in the idea that I struggled with this and Bill struggled with the bad meetings. Now I'm going to come back to the bad meetings and how I rectified this later in the podcast. But I have to say, I was like ruining hours of my life. Literally ruining. And I was spinning my back wheels of my vehicle and I was digging down. I wasn't going anywhere. I was just spinning out, figuratively and literally. And I was getting very upset and had a lot of anxiety. But it's not like I could walk into the senior pastor and go, bro, your meetings suck. Couldn't do that. No. You can't do that.
You start sending him anonymous letters.
Yeah. That's another great strategy. Yeah.
How to lead a meeting.
Yeah. And so I was very concerned, but I had no ability to change it. And so my concern started to erode literally my soul. I was
absolutely.
I was anxious. Okay, let's move on. Here's another one. Oh, well, I want to say this. I stopped the pain of what I couldn't control, their meetings. Here's a quick tip for the heads up for the future. I took control of what I could control, my meetings.
I like
so let's go back in time. So here I was. They had terrible meetings. It was really bothering me. And I stopped the pain of what I couldn't control, their meetings. And I was like, done. I'm no longer freaking out about this. But the way that I decided and the way that I was successful in now no longer caring as much about their meetings and how bad they were, that I took control of what I could, which was my meetings. So in other words, Bill, what I ended up doing is I was like, okay, time out. Josh, quick question. Do you start every meeting on time? And I was like, no, I don't. Okay, then you don't have anything to say about their meetings. Because if you've ever started a meeting late and you showed up late to your own meeting, then you're guilty. And I was like, okay, so the way that I could fix this is never start a meeting late. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm in control of that. For everybody under me, here's an important piece to this. I want everybody in podcast land to listen. I can't control the meetings that are being done to me, but I sure can control all of the meetings that are being done to my people. And so what I hated, I could ensure that nobody downstream from me was going to experience.
Oh, I love that, because it's almost like you could almost see then those bad meetings as a gift.
Preach.
It's a gift. It's a gift to show you that which isn't working so that you can actually implement in your own ministry, your own sphere of responsibility, what will work, and that culture will trickle down from you.
That's exactly what I did, and I did it to the nth degree. So I started literally like honing in my little leadership goggles to go, what is a bother to me? Because if it's a bother to me, it's probably a bother to my people. So am I showing up late to meetings? Okay, I've done that. Never do that again. Do I have they don't have an agenda, and that bothers the heck out of me. Okay, does every meeting that you have an agenda? No. Okay, well, there you go. I'm responsible for my meetings. Make sure that they have an agenda. The list went on. I was really offended at times that they had zero personal connection. It was only them talking, and everybody just kind of sat there. And I thought, wow, I don't think you care about what's going on in our lives. And so then I was like, well, make sure that you care about what's going on in people's lives under you. So it turned out to be a gift, their bad meetings. Isn't that crazy?
That's actually amazing. Amazing principle for ministry in general. Like, you could apply this to all sorts of things. Like
bad events. And I'm just over there taking copious notes to go, never doing that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So,
it's like they're getting to make the mistakes that you don't have to make now because you saw their mistakes.
Yes. And I'm now just an observer. Now watch this. I am concerned about many things, but I am responsible, but for a few. Make sure that my few things are awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah. So about my meetings. Now, I was concerned, hear me out, that the senior leaders were conducting bad meetings. I was concerned about that. I was concerned that the student ministry was mismanaging volunteers. It was absolutely burning my grits. I was so mad about this. And here's why. First of all, like, why would you do that? Like, don't treat volunteers poorly. Now, one of the reasons why I was so mad about this is that some of those parents of student ministry people, the student ministry volunteers, those parents who were serving, they had kids in the children's ministry. And if they had a bad experience serving in student ministry at our church, they might be like, I am never serving at this church again, which ends up affecting me.
Right.
So I was getting my underwear in a wad about how student ministry was mismanaging volunteers. My self-correction to that was observe the stupid things that they're doing and do exactly the opposite.
That's really good.
Another one. We already talked about this, but the church at large adding yet another event, and it was causing like super amounts of stress, and there was like the calendar was way overwhelmed. Well, I can't begin to dictate from my position as a children's ministry person. I couldn't start wagging my bony finger I couldn't clear out the church calendar for other people because I could only be in charge of my stuff. And so all of a sudden I was like, okay, time out. So let's look at my calendar of events. And are any of these things causing what I call the hurried family syndrome? Mm-hmm. Am I overstacking my children's ministry calendar? So we looked at that and we cut some things. Okay, here's another one. A cherished ministry that is utterly failing. I was concerned about that. Everybody loved it. We talked about this just on our last episode, did we not?
Yeah, we did. You got to get off the dead horse.
Get off the dead horse, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of dead horses, and I saw a lot of pastors just whipping the absolute heck out of a dead horse. And I was like, what are we doing? So then all of a sudden, I had to look at some of the cherished ministries in my area. Okay, well, here's what I was responsible for. Those are things that I was concerned about, but I was responsible for how I conducted my meetings. I was concerned about how they were doing theirs, but I'm responsible for mine. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for how my department handles volunteers. I can't control the student ministry, but I am in charge of trimming unnecessary events in my area. Fair. And I'm also responsible for taking over and repairing a failing ministry under my watch. Mm-hmm. So it's really just realizing what I have control over and what I don't have control over. That's really it.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. Yeah. It's so important to get, it's actually kind of a mindset thing, isn't it?
Big
Where
time.
you're like, okay, this is chewing me up, but I can't do anything about it. So instead, what I'm going to do is all of those things are actually indicators of how I can improve my ministry.
That's it. That is exactly it. And then
I love that.
Yeah. Now comes the next part. You really teed me up for the next thing. I call this the daily allotment of energy. Option number one, I can misspend my limited energy on things I can't control. That is called futility. Or with my daily allotment of energy, option two is apply my energy toward things I can control. This is so basic, but I'm telling you, it has been so profound for people all over the country, Bill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think part of the reason why is because it's a great starting point. Like if you're in ministry and you're like, what? Okay, I know my ministry needs to improve, but where do I start? Right? Like, what do I do next? Well, God's given you a vision for what in your church is broken in other ministries. And that should actually be like, those should be like flashing red lights to you.
That's right.
Of, hey, I can make this right in my ministry. I can make this right in my areas of responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right. And rather than becoming like a judgmental curmudgeon, I can actually become an action-based hero that's fixing things under my watch.
Right. And the hope is that the other ministries would look over at you.
Oh, brother.
And they would say, wow, look at how Josh is leading his volunteers. That's way different than I do it. And my volunteers are always upset with me. I have tons of turnover, all these things. Maybe I need to do what Josh is doing.
Brother, can I let me steal my own future thunder and say it took 5, 6, 7 years of this exact principle and me just closing my mouth and being like, nope, I can't fix their area. I'm going to make mine absolutely spit shined. And 7 years, all of a sudden, women's ministry, outreach ministry, student ministry, they came to us. And I'm not kidding about this. And they said, hey, how is it that your team has such low stress and so little turnover? And I was like, well, we kind of just do some, well, can you show us? And I literally made them ask, right? I didn't all of a sudden be like, oh, can I tell you? I was like, oh yeah, well, right. They're like, well, how do you do that? We got some strategies. And then they're like, well, how do you do that? And then I would take them out to lunch. Now, Bill, I did not plan on talking about this, but this is a hilarious story. So the outreach department, and they were a big department at our church. They had their own, a huge community center, 71,000 square feet. I mean, it was Like, we were committed to outreach. They had a stacked staff of really, really, really gifted people. Well, they were one of the ones that came to us and they said, hey, how is it that you this, and this? And I said, can we take you to lunch? We'll pay for it. Just tell us some of your tricks. And I was like, okay, no problem. Now watch this. This is so funny. We were sitting at Jason's Deli waiting for our food to be delivered. And we had just gotten out of the staff meeting that happened on a Monday where the senior leaders came late to the meeting. And as we were waiting for our food and waiting to start the meeting, about which I was going to tell them how I had a really healthy team, one of the leaders, a good friend of mine, started belly aching about how the senior leaders meetings absolutely suck. And I said, hey, guess what? Can I push pause for a second? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you guys brought me to lunch to tell you how I solved and how our team is so healthy. They said, yeah. And I said, can I start telling you that right now? I said, yeah. And I said, okay, Dawn, I love you. Quick question. Have you ever started a meeting late? Because you're ticked that they're starting meetings late. Sometimes. I said, do you have like an airtight agenda for every single meeting? Well, I said, never. Am I right? You never have that. And he goes, no. And I said, okay, so I love you. I'm going to tell you, you can never say another thing about their meetings until you fix all of these things for your meetings. And he said, he was way older than me, seminary, had been a senior pastor of multiple churches. He was a big dog. And he goes, touche, lesson learned, carry on.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, it's kind of one of those things where I think in ministry, we can easily fall into complaining about all the things that are wrong and getting all upset about how dysfunctional things are and all this stuff. But the message that you're giving is actually super empowering.
It's empowering. You're saying it's empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a purpose. There's a purpose behind what you see is wrong and needs to be fixed. And that purpose is to apply fixing it in your own ministry.
That's exactly right. So watch this. The word empowerment. That's the thing that I learned because I felt completely out of control. I felt terribly out of control because all of these things were literally causing my underwear to be so tightly wound that it was cutting off oxygen to my brain. And I was really upset and I was out of control. But all of a sudden, when I realized, forget it, I have to solve this for my area. I now had something that I did have control over and I had autonomy. Yeah. Nobody was telling me how to or how not to do meetings. I was empowered. And now all of a sudden I was like, let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. So this is a huge, huge, huge and powerful concept. And by the way, this is the Burnout series. If you don't get this solved in your heart, you're going to burn out. Trust me. Mm-hmm. Because this was one of the 7 different ways that I was experiencing burnout over my time in ministry. And I had to solve this. Okay. Concerned versus responsible. Others are unprepared. They got messy areas. They've got poor communications. They're being late. They're blowing their budget. Okay. I am responsible to be over-prepared, to have meticulous order, to keep my team informed, to always be on time, and to be deeply considerate of the budget and the dollars. And so I obsessed about making sure that our area had the absolute cleanest in all of our church. Bill, I have so many stories about how, okay, I'm going to tell one as fast as I can. Sorry, didn't plan on this one either. So I hated all of the literature at our church. It was cheesy. It was terrible. Often it was out of date. It had different fonts. It had different logos. It was a horrendous mess, and we were a rather large church. So I spent, this is not an exaggeration, 16 months creating 4 different brochures for our area, and I took an extreme amount of delicate time. It took 16 months. You're like, dude, you can go into Canva and make a brochure in like 2 days, can't you? No, yeah. We really dialed this in, got a professional graphics person. We dialed in our language. These were hot. These were really helpful and informative. Okay, so time passes. Took me 16 months to build these. Now they were out in distribution. Whatever, life is fine. We were all carrying on. And lo and behold, we get over the intercom at our church, quote, emergency meeting in 15 minutes in this big meeting space. And we're all like, oh, what's this about? True story, dude. I'll never forget this. We walk in and a senior pastor is standing there with an absolute manic, angry face. And he pushed together 4 different tables and he had every piece of literature laid out. I don't even know if I've ever told you the story, Bill. All of this literature laid out. And he had a trash can next to one of these tables. This was dramatic, right? This was okay, he picked up one of the things and he said, this is an error. This is not even, the date is wrong. This is wrong. What is going on? This is an old logo. And then for panache, he threw it in the trash. And then he picked up another one, shredded it up, talked about it, told all the things that were wrong, threw it in the trash. This was an hour-long plus meeting. And he went down the pipeline and went through every single one of these things and it was, people were just in shame. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh no, there were 2 left, 2 sets of brochures. The first one that he picked up, this is the last 2. Of those 2, he picked up one, and this was the care and counseling ministry. Well, the care and counseling team came to me and said, hey, this brochure that you created, how did you create it? And I said, we kind of, no, tell us. So I made him tell me, right? Whatever. So then I took him out to lunch. I explained it all. I gave him the exact graphic designer and they modeled theirs after ours. He picked up this one that was care and counseling, went through the whole thing and he said, this is a good brochure. Walked through why it was, did not throw it in the trash, set it on the table, and then he picked up ours. And he said, true story, quote, this is now the new standard for Valley Church. Come on, baby.
You're like, win.
Yes. But I'm telling you, I about crapped my pants when I saw 2 left over and I was like, what is ours going to be, the worst or the best? So my point is what you just said. The reason that I told this story is very important because you had said, what if you do such a good job that everybody now looks to you as the standard? That's exactly what happened on multiple things. Crazy. Am I right?
That is crazy.
Okay. So now to close this off, we're going to land this plane and talk about the let's do it part. How can we get control and reclaim emotional control? And it's a very simple thing. The antidote to burnout is a 4-letter word. Everybody was like, oh, wow, a 4-letter word. Yeah, it's not a naughty word, though. The word is NOPE, N-O-P-E, not our problem, everyone. So all of a sudden, mentally, when all of a sudden I would get frustrated about the student ministry, I would say out loud, oh, nope, N-O-P-E, not our problem, everyone. And I would put up this firewall that was no longer going to allow that stress to come to my world because I wasn't in charge of student ministry. I didn't have any responsibility over that. So it is not our problem, everyone. Now, here's the beautiful part. I came to our staff meeting and I said, hey, there is a new sheriff in town and that new sheriff is a 4-letter word, N-O-P-E. And if you start belly aching about something, somebody in our circle here, you call them out. And if I'm belly aching about something, you call me out. It's N-O-P-E. And it took fire. People on our staff and our little small micro team, they were like, hey, Josh, nope. We can't go there. Can't go there. I don't care if women's ministry is doing that. We have no control over that. What are they doing? Oh, they're doing this. Let's fix it in our area. And so this became this internal mantra. Am I right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
yeah, it's kind of like a micro way to fix everything you don't like about the ministries in your church and make your ministry the best one.
That's exactly right. And that's literally what we did. Okay, so the antidote to burnout is this. Here's a quote. I am concerned about many things. I am responsible, but for a few, focus on the few. Now, this NOPE thing, Bill, I got to be honest with you. I was saying to my very own head, nope, I absolutely don't care about what student ministry is doing. And for a season, that was a good hard line firewall. But I changed my answer to say, oh, I am concerned about that, but I'm not responsible for that. I needed to give myself a little bit of emotional, there was a level of emotional honesty that I really was concerned about that. I couldn't just go, I don't care what they're doing. Because I did care about what they were doing. I cared about it so much that I was losing sleep over it. Right.
And you're not saying that those other ministries didn't affect you in some way. They did.
Right.
And that's why you're concerned, right? And you're concerned for the health of the whole church. That's true.
That's exactly right.
But you're not responsible for that.
That's exactly right. And so here's this antidote to burnout. It's this: we must give ourselves emotional freedom to feel concerned about things, but we must resist the urge to emotionally fret over the things we can't control. I'm going to say it all again. We must give ourselves emotional freedom to be concerned about things. I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about the gospel. I'm concerned about the overall health. I'm concerned about volunteers and how people are being managed at our church. I'm concerned about that. But we must resist the urge to emotionally fret over things we can't control. And Bill, earlier, like you said, this is your life story right now. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so easy when you've been in the church for a while. I've been in my position. Well, I've been at this church for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And so it's so easy to look over everything and be like, oh, why don't we fix that? Like, somebody needs to fix that and that and that and that. And
yeah,
that.
somebody.
Right. And you can get weighed down with just banging my head against the wall about these things. And you can spend a lot of emotional energy on just fretting about those things. But again, I think it comes back to that word empowerment.
Yes.
Like, this concept empowers you to really do this in your own ministry, to take hold of the reins where God has already placed you.
Yes.
And I love that.
Okay, now here's the other funny thing. When we did this and we were just like, okay, here's the deal. We may not be in charge of very much, but we're going to make that sucker shine. And so we did. And then before too long, I read this in a pretty reliable place. The Bible says those who are faithful in little will be faithful in much. And so all of a sudden, the senior leaders of the church were like, well, stink. This thing has got a problem. Let's hand it to Josh and his team. They'll crush it. And so then we got more responsibility. And then we crushed that. And by the way, we learned as we crushed it. We got better because we crushed another thing, and then they continued to give us. We had more and more and more responsibility because we were doing such an excellent job. So now watch this. It took 7 years before people started to notice that we were doing a good job. A lot of people don't like that answer. They're like, I want everybody to come to me like yesteryear. Right. It has to be time plus consistency of crushing it, and then they will come. Trust me. Well,
yeah, that's good.
This is good. This has been a good podcast. I'm going to close with this quote one more time. We must give ourselves emotional freedom to be concerned about many things, but we must resist the urge to emotionally fret over things we can't control. At the end of the day, gang, we need you good folks out there in podcast land to put your energy toward things that you have control over. Well, gang, we're grateful. Thank you guys so much for being here. Remember, NOPE, not our problem, everyone. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Lead Ministry Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and visit leadvolunteers.com for more episodes and resources. Thanks for listening.